Hello and welcome to this Elevate Taster session on power. I'm Joel and I'm presenting with my colleague Patricia. And in this session, we will be looking at the relationship between power and health inequalities. So we will begin by defining what we mean by power and show how power can affect health and health outcomes. And then we will finish by reflecting on our own power and thinking about different actions we can take to redress power imbalances. So just to give you a little bit of background, we work with Community Development and Health Network, CDHN, and CDHN's mission is to use community development and the power within communities to reduce health inequalities. And we have a number of projects that seek to do this. So the first is BCPP, the Building Community Pharmacy Partnership, and it is our longest running project, which supports a community group to work together with a local community pharmacist to address health inequalities in their area. The second is our health literacy work, and we have a few different projects that fall under that, and it's all about promoting and improving health literacy. And finally, Elevate, and it's the project that we are doing this through, and it is funded by the Public Health Agency, and it is focused on embedding community development approaches to reducing health inequalities in both the public and community and voluntary sectors. So just to begin with, as we will see, the evidence tells us that power has a real effect on our health and well-being, but defining power isn't always straightforward. It can be difficult to know exactly what power is and how it affects us. And the word power can actually often invoke negative emotions with thoughts about superiority, dominance, and control. So some other words that might come to mind whenever we think of power are authority, privilege, influence, money, and choice. So defining power can be difficult. It's a difficult and complex concept, and it has different associated connotations that kind of come up with it.
So Joel says power is a very complex concept, and it can be difficult to define, and it can mean different things in different contexts. When we talk about power in the context of health, we find it really useful to use the definition developed by Public Health Scotland and the one that you can see on your screen now. So they talk about power as a complex concept which includes the ability or capacity to do or to not do something. It also includes exercising influence, control, or force through a variety of means. Power or lack of power can have an important impact on people's circumstances and therefore on their health. And when we think about power, it's important to remember that power doesn't belong to one person. It exists in the relationships between people and between groups of people. It also, feelings of power can differ and vary depending on the situation and depending on the circumstances. So people can feel they have a lot of power in some situations, can feel powerless in other situations. And this might be something that we can all relate to, whether it be in our work life or in our home life. An example that we always feel is good to share at this point is one from our Elevate training. And when we were talking about power, a community group shared that they can often feel very powerful when they're working alongside people within their community delivering their service. They can feel powerless when they're meeting with funders or the governing bodies that oversee work that they do. So it's important to remember that and be aware of that feelings of power can change depending on the circumstances and on the situation. The power isn't always visible or obvious. When we have the power to influence the decisions around different aspects of our life, like where we live, what we do as a job, what we spend the money on, we don't always recognize this as being power. Sometimes think of this as normal. So when we have power, we're better able to influence the decisions that affect our life. Actually, when we have limited power, we feel less control and less choice over those important decisions that influence different aspects of our life and ultimately our health as well.
So it is widely accepted that there are 4 types of power. The first is power over, and it is probably most commonly understood. This type of power is built on force, coercion, domination, and control, and it is motivated largely through fear. This form of power is built on a belief that power is a finite resource that can be held by individuals, and that some people have power and some others don't. The second is power 2, and it refers to productive or generative potential of power and the new possibilities of actions that are created without using relationships or domination. It is built on the unique potential of every person to shape his or her own life and world. and it is power to make a difference, to create something new, or to achieve goals. Power with is a shared power that grows out of collaboration and relationships. It is built on respect, mutual support, shared power, solidarity, influence, empowerment, and collaborative decision making. Rather than domination and control, power with leads to collaborative or collective action and the ability to act together. And finally, power within. It is related to a person's self-worth and self-knowledge. It includes an ability to recognize individual differences while respecting others. Power within involves people having a sense of their own capacity and self-worth. And power within allows people to recognize their power to and power with, and believe that they have a positive difference to make in the world around them. So power is named as a fundamental cause of health inequalities. As you can see, the definition of health inequalities provided by the Public Health Agency states that health inequalities are the unfair and avoidable differences in the health of people in our society. They are the result of imbalances of power, wealth, and resources, and are produced and shaped by factors such as quality of housing, educational attainment, employment opportunities, physical environment, and access to services, and level of social connections known as social determinants. So if we're serious about addressing health inequalities, we have to think seriously about redressing power imbalances. This is because the evidence shows us that those who have power to control their lives and the environments in which they live are likely to have better physical, social, and mental well-being. So power or lack of can have significant impacts on people's circumstances and therefore on their health. At an individual level, this looks like somebody having the power to have the ability to control their own lives and access resources and experiences that benefit their health. The very power to choose what to do with your life and how to live it has been shown to improve a person's health and well-being. The feeling of powerlessness, meanwhile, can cause stress and anxiety, and this clearly can have negative impacts on your health. Not only your mental health, but also your physical and your social well-being as well. But also at a community level, the exercise of power can shape public debate, social norms, and decision making. And this therefore can favour and privilege some groups over others, and create injustices and disadvantages that includes life experiences and subsequent health outcomes. So when we're thinking about power and power inequalities, it's important to remember how these power imbalances can affect people at that micro individual level, but also the macro societal level as well.
We've talked a wee bit about power and what power means, and also the relationship between power and health. Now we're going to look at what actions can we take to help redistribute power and make sure that it is equally shared. The first one we have on our screen here is the idea of promoting power with and power within. So that idea of actively promoting collective action between communities and organisations, and also with power within, as Joel said, capacity for individuals to exercise power. It's also about valuing the knowledge, skills, and lived experience of people within communities in planning and delivering services. So, in a way, empowering people to be actively involved in making those decisions around those factors that affect their lives. So, if we are developing a service, and we're going directly to the people who will use that service and asking for their input. Co-producing programs and services and actively involving people and communities and asking what matters to you. So in this way, really valuing the expertise and the lived experience of people within the communities and giving them the opportunity to have their say. And when we think about engagement and making it easy for everyone to have their say, we want to think about what barriers might exist for people to engage, whether it be at an individual level in terms of low literacy skills, or maybe a lack of confidence to be able to want to get involved, but also at an organisational and a structural level, thinking about the processes that are in place around engagement, how complicated are they to navigate, and also how accessible is it to be able to be involved. So when we're inviting people to be involved and have their say, we want to think about how easy we are making it for people, and so we can really encourage people to get involved. We've looked at some actions that can help us redistribute power. We feel that a really important starting point in terms of reflecting on power is thinking about what power do we hold. So after watching today's session, we would like everybody to think about the following questions. Is the concept of power something you've considered before? Do you reflect on the power you or your organisation holds? And if you feel you do hold power or your organisation holds power, what type of power do you recognise as being associated with your role? Whether that be power over, power to, power with, power within. And finally then, thinking about work that you do and the role that you have, do you feel you're actively working to release the power within the communities or individuals you support? So as we've said, we feel this is a really important starting point in terms of redistributing power, taking the opportunity to reflect upon the power that we ourselves hold or the organisation that we work for hold. But today's taster session was really just an overview on the topic of power, and we've included some additional resources if you would like to find out more information on this topic. So we have there a link to the Elevate portal, which is a website from our Elevate programme, which contains a range of resources on key topics like health inequalities, social determinants of health and power. We've also included the link to Public Health Scotland, where you can find a range of information on the topic of power, and also then the WHO conceptual framework for action on the social determinants of health will give you more information on the 4 types of power that we've talked about in today's session. So thank you for watching our session on power today. If you would like more information, please about CDHN, please visit our website or follow us on Facebook or Twitter.